Cats are annoying. Soon all the men of Israel were coming to the king and saying to him, "Why did our brothers, the men of Judah, steal the king away and bring him and his household across the Jordan together with all his men?" All the men of Judah answered the men of Israel, "We did this because the king is closely related to us. Why are you angry about it? Have we eaten any of the king's provisions? Have we taken anything for ourselves?" Then the men of Israel answered the men of Judah, "We have 10 shares in the king." I mean, there's 10 of them and only 1 of Judah. "And besides, we have a greater claim on David than you have. So why did you treat us with contempt? Were we not the first to speak of bringing back our king?" But the men of Judah responded even more harshly than the men of Israel. So they were never really united. Even here, when they're at their most united, I guess the days of Solomon, they still had the differences and disputes. There always was a friction there. They were never really totally 100% united. Now a troublemaker named Shebai, son of Bichri, a Benjamite, another Benjamite, these troublesome Benjamites, happened to be there. He sounded the trumpet and shouted, "We have no share in David, no part in Jesse's son. Every man to his tent, O Israel." These Benjamites are still trying to get the kingship back. They have not quite gotten used to the idea that the Judahites are going to be kings from now on. So all the men of Israel deserted David to follow Sheba, son of Bichri. But the men of Judah stayed by their king all the way from the Jordan to Jerusalem. When David returned to his palace in Jerusalem, he took the 10 concubines, remember those are the ones who were raped by Absalom, he had left to take care of the palace and put them in a house under guard. He provided for them, but he did not lie with them. They've been soiled. They were marred. They were touched by his enemy. He can't have any more relations with them again. They were kept in confinement until the day of their deaths, all living as widows. That's sad. That's kind of sad. Then the king said to Amasa, "Summon the men of Judah to come to me within 3 days, and be here yourself." But when Amasa went to summon Judah, he took longer than the time the king had set for him. Now, I don't know why. Maybe it was an impossible task to do in just 3 days. Maybe he got delayed. Maybe he didn't understand. I don't know. He didn't, whatever the reason. I'm not sure if the demand itself would have been unreasonable to begin with, or what. But he does not get there in time. So David said to Abishai, "Take Sheba, son of Bichri." Now, Sheba, son of Bichri, will do us more harm than Absalom did. Take your master's men and pursue him, for he will find fortified cities and escape from us. So Joab's men and the Kerethites and Pelethites and all the mighty warriors went out under the command of Abishai. Now remember, David wants to demote Joab. We read that back in the previous chapter. He wants to put Amasa in charge of the army now instead of Joab. So he gave Amasa the command first. Amasa has not, for whatever the reason, has not gotten there in time with all the men. So he's going to Abishai, but not to Joab, because Joab he's trying to demote Joab. But Joab is going with Abishai. But he's not. But David has given the orders to Amasa and to Abishai, not to Joab. They marched out from Jerusalem to pursue Sheba, son of Bichri. While they were at the great rock in Gibeon, Amasa came to meet them. So he's here now. Joab was wearing his military tunic, and strapped over it at his waist was a belt with a dagger in its sheath. We've seen Joab pull this kind of stunt before. I think I know what's about to happen, don't you? And he stepped forward. As he stepped forward, it dropped out of its sheath. Joab said to Amasa, "How are you, my brother?" Then Joab took Amasa by the beard with his right hand to kiss him. Amasa was not on his guard against the dagger in Joab's hand, and Joab plunged it into his belly, and his intestines spilled out on the ground, without being stabbed again, so one shot was enough. Amasa died. Then Joab and his brother Abishai pursued Sheba, son of Bichri. One of Joab's men stood beside Amasa and said, "Whoever favors Joab, and whoever is for David, let him follow Joab." Amasa lay wallowing in his blood in the middle of the road, and the man saw that all the troops came to a halt there. When he realized everyone who came up to Amasa stopped, he dragged him from the road into a field and threw a garment over him. After Amasa had been removed from the road, all the men went on with Joab to pursue Sheba, son of Bichri. Sheba passed through all the tribes of Israel to Abel Beth Makkah, and through the entire region of the Berites, who gathered together and followed him. So we have to put down this one last rebellion here. All the troops with Joab came and besieged Sheba and Abel Beth Makkah. They built a siege ramp up to the city, and it stood against the outer fortifications. While they were battering the wall to bring it down, a wise woman called out from the city, "Listen, listen! Tell Joab to come here so I can speak to him." He went toward her, and she asked, "Are you Joab?" "I am," he answered. She said, "Listen to what your servant has to say." "I'm listening," he said. Now he would have to be on his guard here. Remember the story of the woman in the tower of Shiloh, I think it was Shiloh, throwing the rock on Ahimelech's head way back in Judges, which David mentioned. David and Joab had correspondence about that. They know about that story. So Joab is probably not getting too close to this wall, as this woman has called out to him to talk to him. She continued, "Long ago they used to say, 'Get your answer at Abel, and that settled it.'" So this is a place known for settling disputes. "We are the peaceful and the faithful in Israel. You are trying to destroy a city that is a mother in Israel. Why do you want to swallow up the Lord's inheritance?" "Far be it from me," Joab replied. "Far be it from me to swallow up or destroy. That is not the case. A man named Sheba, son of Bichri, from the hill country of Ephraim, has lifted up his hand against the king, against David. Hand over this one man, and I will withdraw from the city." That's all I want is this one guy. Just like earlier, all we wanted was Absalom, and all Absalom wanted was David. We just want this one guy. Give us this one guy, and there's no reason for further bloodshed. The woman said to Joab, "His head will be thrown to you from the wall." Then the woman went to all the people with her wise advice, and they cut off the head of Sheba, son of Bichri, and threw it to Joab. So he sounded the trumpet, and his men dispersed from the city, each returning to his home. And Joab went back to the king in Jerusalem. Joab was over Israel's entire army. Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, was over the Kerethites and Pelethites, those are the foreign bodyguards. Adoniram was in charge of forced labor. Jehoshaphat, son of Ahilud, was recorder. Sheva was secretary. Zadok and Abiathar were priests. And Ira the Jerite was David's priest. So that takes us to basically the end of the narrative of David's life in 2 Samuel. We have read there are several chapters left to go in 2 Samuel. We have already read most of them. Next time we will begin the last chapter of 2 Samuel. We will do the last chapter of 2 Samuel, which is about another sin that David commits, and counting his fighting men, and conducting a military census. And we'll talk about that. And 2 Samuel only has one chapter about that, but 1 Chronicles goes into much greater information about what happens after that, because that leads directly to the purchase of the site for where the temple would be eventually. So we'll talk about that, and then we'll read the last words of David. So we're nearing the end of our time in dealing with David. We basically have got one last episode to get through where he commits another sin and has to deal with that, and that ends up leading to the purchase of the site where the temple will end up being, and the preparations he makes for that. And then, of course, the end of David, his actual, death, and the beginning of Solomon's reign. So we're getting there. But we've been in Samuel for a long time, but we're almost through the lifetime of David. And then when we do get to the lifetime of David, we'll talk about what David means historically to Israel and to the Old Testament, and what that means for Jesus and how all that ties together. Because there's a lot of stuff about David. There's and of course he wrote a lot of the Psalms too. At least his name is attached to him. And so we'll talk about the significance. And we'll after we get done reading the life of David, we'll talk again about like the overall significance of David in the scheme, in the grand scheme of things.